What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, about an hour after Newswave went live, Nintendo announced that there was a big direct for February planned just 24 hours later, and we're going to be going over that announcement here today because, wow, what a surprise. Who saw that one coming? Also, we are going to be talking about Scalebound once again, as PlatinumGames is actually talking about wanting to take another shot at this thing with Microsoft, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the Steam Deck, as reviewers are starting to get their units in hand. They're taking a look at different things, which also includes the battery life. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all of the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with an update for the PlayStation 5, specifically if you were part of the beta program to try out different firmwares early. There is a firmware going live today, and they posted this page up going over some of the details, which I'll leave down in the sources if you want to see what this new firmware will have available. That does include new party chat options, as well as PS5 game-based enhancements and new PS5 UI features. Looking through this, it seems to be more shortcuts and quality of life features that I'm sure have been brought up by many people just using the PlayStation 5. But one thing I really liked that they pointed out here is the ability to keep different games on your home menu. So they say you can now keep the games or apps you choose on your home screen by selecting Keep in Home with the Options button. They'll allow you to keep a maximum of 5 games and apps on each home screen with this feature, which is great since as you put new games on your PS5, it'll kind of just kick games off of your menu completely until I guess you play it again and it brings it back up to the front. Just kind of a way to lock in a game maybe that you keep going back to, or you just want to have there on your home screen completely. It's just a nice feature to have. So nothing groundbreaking here necessarily, but just good quality of life features that they're continuing to add and improve on the PS5. Also, we know that Sony is making a big push towards live service games, 10 of them in fact, over the next 5 or 6 years, and it looks like Haven will be providing one of those live service games. There was an update with Jade Raymond going over her new independent studio that she's founded after leaving Stadia, which, I mean, that was like a year-long run there, but Haven looks much more promising now. In fact, they have some big plans for this game. We can see this posted up by Nebellion with some of the summary here, saying it's coming to the PS5 and PC. Not surprising. Again, Haven is an independent studio that Sony is working to fund this project. Company has now tripled in size. In fact, it appears they're pulling a lot of big talent from places even like Ubisoft, which makes sense. Jade Raymond has a lot of ties to Ubisoft after working to produce and direct several big titles like Assassin's Creed. The first game is a persistent and scalable, evolving online environment, and the team wants to push the PS5 console and collab with Mark Cerny, who is the lead architect for the PlayStation 5, someone who knows quite a bit about that system. So I'm very curious to see what they come up with here. My biggest hope for this push for live service titles, with Sony looking to do 10 of them, means we're going to see more creativity in that space, as it appears that the big prevailing genre is like the looter shooter. I'd like to see some different ideas thrown into this space when it comes to live service games, especially if you have Haven with Jade Raymond and Mark Cerny even getting involved. Could be something very interesting to follow here. Oh, and we do have Horizon Forbidden West coming up very, very quickly, less than 2 weeks now, and there was a new update that went live for Ghost of Tsushima with a bit of a crossover there for Horizon Forbidden West. We can see some of the patch notes here. It says, single player, the Forbidden Shrine can now be found to the north of Iki Island. Interact with it and solve the puzzle for a special armor created in collaboration with our friends at Guerrilla. There's also an update here with a new difficulty level for survival in Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and they also added a block button to social tab in Paul's menu, and then a few other smaller details there. But it's really cool to see this crossover, I guess, between first-party studios at Sony, getting really some sort of a themed item in these different games as another game is launching. Just brings more awareness, and it's just fun to see. So pretty cool update there for Ghost of Tsushima. Make sure you check it out. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Direct that was announced again yesterday, about an hour after Newswave went live. I tried to get out in front of it the best I could, but I mean, Nintendo, they just wanted to make sure they were there right away after Newswave went up. Anyway, we can see the tweet here. This posted up saying, tune in February 9th at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. Live stream featuring roughly 40 minutes of information, mainly focusing on Nintendo Switch games launching in the first half of 2022. I will be live streaming this because I think it's gonna be a pretty big show. In fact, there are several marketing and PR employees at Nintendo who are saying you're gonna want to tune in. There's quite a bit of stuff here. I mean, it's kind of their job to hype that up, but I think Nintendo has a lot to show here. They say the first half of 2022. They've said this before, like, oh, first half of this year, second half of this year for the holiday season. And then they always end up talking about at least one or two other titles that are a bit further out. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Breath of the Wild, or the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, was here in some capacity, whether it was a release date or the title reveal. And we know that game's not coming out in the first half of 2022, but there could be some other Zelda-related stuff there, as the Wind Waker, Twilight Princess ports from the Wii U have been teased many times for like the last year, so that wouldn't shock me to see that there. But there are a lot of big questions around things like Fire Emblem, as we were looking for a new title from Intelligent Systems there in the series, not necessarily a remake. The Metroid Prime remaster remake is most likely going to be there, and then it's kind of just up in the air after that. Will Mario Kart 9 be there? That's the big question. It's actually a poll later on in the show that I wanted to see where people would fall in line for this. I like to post those questions up ahead of a direct just to see if the majority of voters can get it right. Because honestly, if you're Nintendo, why jump to Mario Kart 9? We just talked about how Mario Kart 8 Deluxe will not stop selling. So it's exciting stuff to get that big direct finally to kick off the year. Nintendo fans have been pretty patient, of course. Legends Arceus came out, and I'm sure Nintendo wanted to allow that to sort of get out there and sit on shelves for a bit, sell 6.5 million copies, because why not? It's Pokemon. And now we can look forward to what they have for us in 2022. So make sure you tune in later on today. I'll probably go live 20 to 30 minutes ahead of the direct. We'll check it out, and then of course I'll give some of my immediate reactions afterwards and post those up on the second channel. So exciting stuff. Next up, let's talk about PlatinumGames, Scalebound, and Microsoft. This was a game that appeared like it was going to actually come out because they had footage of it. Didn't look the greatest at the time when it came to performance, and then we found out there was a lot that was tied into the multiplayer side of that, and seemed like, unfortunately, it just wasn't going to work out at the time, towards the middle of the Xbox One run. But it does look like more and more talks around this game have been coming up, specifically with Hideki Kamiya in different interviews. Whenever PlatinumGames sits down and they're asked about it, they seem very interested in pursuing this game once again. And, well, the other day it was no different, as Atsushi Inaba and Hideki Kamiya sat down with IGN Japan. They say often in an interview, you might hear a developer politely saying, yes, if we had the opportunity, we'd love to work on that again, but we don't mean it that way. Both Kamiya and I are serious. We really would love to work on Scalebound again. I'd like to discuss it with Microsoft properly. Kamiya went further, saying development had progressed a fair way, and it seems pointless for Microsoft to just hold on to that and not do anything with it. Going on further in English, saying, Phil, let's do it together. Now, this is Platinum's job, is to try to get publishers, big publishers, platform holders on board to fund projects through PlatinumGames. They're doing their own self-published game with Project GG. Again, funding from Tencent, which, hey, maybe a live service idea or a pitch that way was a way to make that happen. But to have something like Scalebound come back now, I don't think it's a bad idea necessarily, because obviously Microsoft is looking for just variety in general for Game Pass. It really comes down to if PlatinumGames can actually make it work, because it sounded like they had the idea figured out if it was going to be a single-player game, but Microsoft was looking for a multiplayer game alongside of it. Having multiple dragons on screen was a problem. At least that's kind of how the rumors and speculation have gone. Who really knows what actually happened inside Platinum and Microsoft with some of those conference calls and everything around this. But certainly it didn't go smoothly, because eventually it got canceled, and it seems like it's more legend status now. Like, I do wonder if Scalebound came back, big announcement, hey, we're reviving it, we're gonna take a shot at it with PlatinumGames once again, if it would mostly just be that excitement and hype initially of that announcement, then people wouldn't really buy it. I mean, the thing with this is Game Pass allows these kind of projects to exist now because of the variety that Microsoft's looking for, concurrent player counts, or at least engagement with their ecosystem. Not necessarily like, hey, if we greenlight Scalebound, will it be able to sell 5 million copies? More like, hey, if we greenlight Scalebound, will it have at least 5 million players overall? Like how they say, oh, 20 million people have played Halo. Not all at once, right? Just over time, people saw it and said, hey, I'll try out Halo. Would that same thing happen with Scalebound? To be honest, it might, because that game from the outside will probably look a lot different than other things in Game Pass from Microsoft. And if you think about it, Microsoft has considered the idea of buying different Japanese studios if it'd be possible. And if they're not able to do that successfully, why not fund projects from Japanese studios? Like PlatinumGames is saying, hey, let's try Scalebound again. Why not do something there? You go to Bandai Namco and others. So that's the route I would take if I was Microsoft right now, because buying a studio in Japan seems like it would be extremely difficult for them, whereas, hey, just funding different projects with these studios would be much easier, I would say. And, I mean, Microsoft owns Scalebound, so it's not coming out of Game Pass after a certain amount of time like we see with other third-party games. So I'm crossing my fingers. I would love to see them take a shot at it again, maybe with a different approach. Who knows, it could happen. Next up, let's talk about the Steam Deck, as people are starting to get emails here soon, just kind of confirming payment for a shipment of the initial wave of these Steam Decks, and we are starting to see reviewers get hands-on with these, even tearing them down and putting them through quite a few stress tests, and that's what I was mostly curious about, because obviously Valve is going to tell us all the good stuff, the best ranges they can come up with, and of course they'll say things like battery life is 2 to 8 hours, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, somewhere in the middle then, right? It'd be like 5 hours of battery life. Well, it depends on the settings, and this is one drawback you're gonna see with PC games in general, is the settings tab can actually hurt the battery life depending on what you have like picked or what boxes you have checked, specifically when it comes to things like VSync. Now, Gamers Nexus did an awesome video really diving in depth with all of the different things around the Steam Deck through testing, thermals, all of this stuff. So I would check that video out. But some of their battery tests were interesting. I mean, that's the biggest thing right now that a product like the Steam Deck will struggle with, is the battery life depending on how you want to use it, specifically what games you want to play on it. For example, Devil May Cry 5 was tested quite extensively here, and turning off VSync would give you like much higher frame rates that don't make a lot of sense, especially with lower settings. So like you might be 70, 80, 90 frames per second on a display that you're pretty much capped at 60. However, because the system is still pushing those higher frame rates internally, the battery life is much lower. In fact, they were closer to like an hour 40 minutes for Devil May Cry 5. Just 20 minutes or so under the 2-hour mark that Valve had set up as kind of the minimum. And we'll probably see that as games come out that are more and more demanding. But if you play something like Dead Cells, like 5, 6, even 7 hours, depending on brightness and settings and all of this there. So it's going to be quite the range, and it's going to come down to the intensity around the visuals and graphics in these games that you're using. But I would certainly recommend turning on VSync, because I don't really know what benefit you would get leaving it off and pushing something like 90 frames in some of these games. You would just put more of a strain on the system itself, which in turn would give you a smaller battery life overall. But I am excited to get my hands on the Steam Deck. Whenever that email shows up and I can confirm the shipment and all of this, we'll get it brought in, I'll do some tests and the teardown. It should be a lot of fun. It's just, here's hoping it's sooner rather than later. In our last bit of news, let's talk about Take-Two and their plans to release different sequels to some of their well-known IPs in the coming months. And this got me curious when they mentioned this, because there was also a slide that appeared to be tucked away in their investors briefing that pointed to some older games that I would love to see sequels for. But let's take a look at the quote here. This on the conference call with Strauss Zelnick, saying, "We have the strongest and most diverse pipeline in our company's history, comprised of new intellectual properties as well as sequels to many of our beloved franchises. We look forward to delivering many of these titles in the coming months and beyond." Now, if you look at the slide that they have on page 12 in their investors briefing, we can see their diverse portfolio of industry-leading intellectual property. That includes LA Noire, Midnight Club, which they say created the open city street racing genre, and then Max Payne, with Max Payne 3 being the last one. That is also backwards pedal, by the way, on the Xbox Series. If you have not played it, I fully recommend it. Max Payne 3, I think, was completely ahead of its time and still holds up very, very well today. but I would love to see Midnight Club. That's the biggest one right now. Sure, a Max Payne 4, that'd be great. Or just a new Max Payne game in general. But Midnight Club was such a cool series at the time. It was very different from games around it back then. I mean, it was like, hey, here's a point on the map. You just get there. We're not going to bar off different streets or anything. It's just, you're going to race another car. You guys might come from different angles. You just got to get to this point, and then the next point will spawn. And they also had a pretty good layout of things like LA for Midnight Club LA, and it felt like it was the actual city you were driving around with, people pointing out landmarks that they recognized from real life. Oh, and people keep talking about Bully 2 as apparently being in active development. It's still the big rumor going around. Who knows there? I mean, I feel like all hands are on deck with the Rockstar's A-team when it comes to Grand Theft Auto 6, and maybe they want to do something to change things up a bit with another team for Midnight Club or for a more narrative-driven experience with Max Payne. Let me know what you would like to see Take-Two have a sequel for in the coming months. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, does Nintendo announce a new Mario Kart for the Switch in the Direct? 77% said no, 23% said yes. I'm just going to assume most of you are just trying not to jinx this whole thing with a new Mario Kart. Obviously, people want a new Mario Kart. It's been a long time. And the reason I would like to see a new Mario Kart is because I can't imagine they've taken all this time to work on a new Mario Kart and it not have some massive change up, like some big new concept that's really going to impress people. Otherwise, if it shows up and it's just another Mario Kart game, people will still be excited, but I would be a little disappointed that Nintendo didn't try something brand new with it to get maybe a bit more creative with the formula. So we'll see if Nintendo is ready to push to Mario Kart 9, and I gotta admit, if I'm them, I'm probably not, because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe keeps selling, and maybe Mario Kart 9 is a great way to kick off the next Switch system. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Flip saying, my big problem with live service games is that so many of them seem to expect to be the only game I'm actively playing at a given time, and often actively punish me for taking a break to either play another game or just to deal with real life, as if the game expects me to devote my entire life to just it alone. Realistically, any more than one live service game at a time, and my quality of life suffers dramatically. So the more the gaming world saturates itself with live services, the less inclined I become to interact with any of them at all. That, I feel like, is a problem Ubisoft is running into, where they're trying to make every one of their games basically just last forever. If you played through the latest Far Cry game, you might have got to the end and been like, oh, they're going to keep putting content in, kind of. It's like cookie cutter, like, we'll every day there'll be a new big boss that ends up in a part of the world. You have to go take them down. But like, that's Ubisoft's thing, is they want a bunch of live services. Sony wants a bunch of live services, and eventually you just run out of time. Like, there's not enough time to go around for all these live service games. And sometimes it's just nice to sit down with a game, play through it for a solid 10 to 12 hour experience, and just feel like you got a lot out of that, and then move on to the next game, rather than feel like you have to put hundreds and hundreds of hours into one live service game just to feel like you're keeping up. So yeah, that would be I think an unfortunate future if it was all live service stuff, because then you just wouldn't have enough time for it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Scalebound? Would you like to see Microsoft and PlatinumGames take another shot at it, or do you think it's best they just kind of leave that one in the past? And then, obviously, what about the Nintendo Direct? Leave your best predictions and hopes down in the comments. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.